Welcome to this week's edition of Good Books Radio. I'm your host, Dr. W.F. Strong. I want to thank our sponsor, audiobooks.com, for underwriting the program. We have a great show for you today. We have Mr. Bill Wittliff, who has been the screenwriter for some great movies that you're very familiar with. A Perfect Storm. He was a screenwriter for Legends of the Fall, and he was screenwriter for my favorite movie of all time, Lonesome Dove. And that's one reason we're going to talk to him today, is specifically about Lonesome Dove and about his new novel, The Devil's Backbone. So I'm going to talk about those two things. That's why I'm not going to stretch out this introduction. Just let you know what a great Texan Mr. Wittliff is, and we're going to go and talk to him right now. I want to begin with Lonesome Dove because in my experience, well, I'm like a lot of people in Texas that this must be for Texans what the Iliad was for the Greeks. It has become a part of, my personal, a kind of Bible in a sense, words to live by. And I found a lot of people are that way. A lot of people are extraordinarily committed, you might say, to this mini-series. And, of course, you've lived with it all these years in a very personal way. So what is your experience with that and the general strength of the mini-series in Texas culture?
Well, of course, it all comes from Larry's book. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what Larry had his thumb on when he wrote it. Mm-hmm. But, boy, I mean, it rang all the bells.
Yes.
And Larry got up from the typewriter and walked off from it at least 3 times, maybe 4 times.
Wow.
He just said, well, no, that's enough. But then he always came back. Mm-hmm. And, Lonesome Dove, both Larry's book and now the miniseries, have absolutely become a part of the American fabric.
Mm-hmm.
It's just astonishing. It's not just America either. I mean, I get calls from people in Ireland. I've gotten, Europe, England, just as caught up in the whole Lonesome Dove thing as Americans and Texans are. It's just been astonishing.
Is there a Lonesome Dove kind of uncut version? Someone told me once there's a longer version that's uncut, but nobody can get it.
Well, it actually was cut.
Uh-huh.
It's not mixed. I mean, it was not scored and all that.
Uh-huh.
But no, we cut it. There's a longer version that has a couple of things in it that I would love to have, in the finished product. The old bone hunter,
Mm-hmm. He was great.
Yeah, but it's and I went to CBS when we were right at the tail end of editing. Mm-hmm. And said, the best version of this thing has another, I've forgotten what it was. It was the equivalent of 30 minutes mm-hmm. with a commercial. 18 minutes, 22 minutes, something like that. And CBS liked it, and I think they would have added a 30-minute, piece to it, except they would have had to renegotiate all the contracts.
Oh.
And that was just too troublesome. They couldn't do it.
Well, is it possible to get that version? Is it anywhere?
No.
No, you can't get it?
No.
I guess also had they known that it was going to be the blockbuster over this 3 decades, they might have ponied up for it.
Well, it just wasn't possible.
It just wasn't possible
to do it at the time. No, it just would have been too much.
Now, you were the executive producer, right?
Suzanne DePass and I were the executive producers, yeah.
So you were on set with all these cattle drives, and were you there present a lot of the time?
All the time.
All the time.
Virtually every day. For me, Lonesome Dove was a solid 2 years. It was a year writing the script, and then it was another year, from locations and casting and, all of that to actually shooting it, and then the editing and the scoring and, all of it, and distribution.
And did you know when you were doing it, did you know it was going to be so phenomenal?
Here's what I did know. I knew because I saw the dailies every morning.
Uh-huh.
And I knew, what was going through the camera was incredible stuff, incredible performances. What I didn't know was that, the audience would take to it the way they did. That I didn't know. I knew it was going to be great, and I knew it was going to be, really phenomenal. It was just incredible to watch, sit there every day and watch Duvall and Tommy Lee, all of them, deliver those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And you simply could not be there and not know, But what I didn't know was that, the audience would take to it the way they did.
Well, I remember seeing the first time it was on TV, and a friend of mine and I would never miss it. We say, "I'll see you tonight. I'll be there."
Yeah.
And we just got hooked, big time. And then, later as it was on TV again, we would always watch it. And I know people who, and I'm sure you do too, people who watch it at least once a year, just, to refresh, enjoy once again.
Oh, listen, there are people, and this is all over the country and in some other parts of the world, who once every 6 months, will watch 3 hours of it, stop, have dinner, then watch the other 3 hours. And it's just become a kind of a ritual with a lot of people.
Yeah,
it's all over the place. And now, it's the next generation or two that's doing it.
Yeah. Well,
so
one thing I get a lot, I have a Facebook page that's devoted to Texas culture, and about 20,000 people are on it, and there's a lot of discussion of Lonesome Dove. And one thing often brought up is, why don't we get more of this? Since it's so popular, why don't they make more? Why are Westerns dying?
Well, listen, the deal about television is, it's about putting butts in seats in front of television sets, to make money, and that's what it is. And people forget. At the time we did Lonesome Dove, the only thing deader than Westerns were miniseries. And this was both a Western and a miniseries. But, it would be, I'm not saying it's not possible, but it would be really difficult to assemble a cast like that.
Yes.
These days, I don't know where you'd go, and,
Is this the most successful?
We were very lucky to get the guys we got.
You had a kind of magic there, because you had a wonderful script, you had a wonderful novel to start with, and then you produced a great script, and then you had the perfect actors for this movie. It just a lot of things came together. And to use your other script, is a perfect storm of good news here.
Yeah, thank you.
Now the is this the most successful miniseries in television history?
No, I don't think so. I think it's right up there with the top, 3 or 4. I think Roots, and I could be wrong, but I think Roots is the most successful at the time it came out.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Roots has had the staying power.
Yeah,
that Lonesome Dove. I
don't know anybody's worn out a CD of Roots, but maybe I'm just in the wrong demographic to know that.
Well, it was a very successful miniseries, and it should have been. That was a terrific piece of work.
Oh, I remember watching it. I remember seeing it, but I just don't know people who watch it every year.
No, I know.
Who wear out a CD of the thing and know all the lines. I think the most popular line in Lonesome Dove is the line. I hate rude behavior in a man.
Yeah, I know it. Well, I'll tell you a funny story. When I was doing The Perfect Storm, I called the lady captain who was on the other sword boat. Her name was Linda Greenlaw. And, because I wanted to get an idea of what was going on, another boat that went through that storm but survived. And anyway, we started talking. I said, well, that must be a little strange. You're the captain of a sword boat, everybody else is on your crew is a man. And I said, how does that work? And she said, oh, well, I had my room upstairs on deck. And she said they were down in the galley. Mm-hmm. So she said, there was really never any problem, any conflict or anything. Mm-hmm. And she said, in fact, every night, she said they would be down in the galley watching this same Western. And she said, and then the next day, they would be up on deck, doing the work, but exchanging lines from this Western. And, of course, I knew what it was. And I said, well, what was it? And she said, it's a thing called Lonesome Dove. And so that was a nice little treat.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story. Where did Larry get the Lonesome Dove title? I mean, where did he come up with Lonesome Dove?
I think, don't trust me on that.
Okay.
But I think there actually is a little town between, say, Waco and Austin called Lonesome Dove or something, or there. I think that's right. It's a little town somewhere.
And the Lonesome Dove in the set is where you filmed? Where is that?
That was on Bill Moody's ranch, which was 50,000 acres right on the Rio Grande, just north of Del Rio.
Okay, just north of Del Rio.
So we found a spot, right above the Rio Grande, and built a little town of Lonesome Dove, right, almost exactly as Larry had it in the book. Mm-hmm.
No, that's wonderful.
And there were times when we would be filming in the little town, and we would look out and we would see some foreign exchange students, wading across the Rio Grande, and we'd have to, holler, "Andale, andale," and they would hurry on across, and then we'd get back to filming. It was wonderful. I mean, it was a great adventure making this thing.
And was McMurtry involved at all? Did he come hang out with you guys?
No, he never came. Yeah. He read the scripts as I did them. I sent him drafts of those. And but no, and in fact, when they asked me to do it, if I wanted to do it, I called Larry and said, don't you want to do this? And he said, no,
I'm done with it.
I'm cooked on that.
Well, now
Larry's always been real smart about, movies and his books. I mean,
I've read almost all of them. I think a few here and there I haven't found an interest for, but I probably read 70% of his material. I just loved it because it was the first writer I ever came across where I saw my people in him. I saw my relatives and Now he originally wrote the script for, or at least it was designed some years earlier for John Wayne to play Call. Larry
and Peter Bogdanovich were going to do a Western. Wanted to do a Western. This was after they did. God, I can't even remember the title of it. It's terrible. I'll think of it in a minute.
Okay.
But yeah, and it was for, as I recall, they wanted John Wayne, Henry Fonda, and I think it was Richard Widmark or Jimmy Stewart. Mm-hmm. But those guys didn't want to work together.
Really?
But Larry did in fact write a script,
and
then later he bought the script back from whichever studio owned it, and then made a novel, which is not like the movie he wrote. Generally speaking, I mean, certainly there are crossovers, but it was not the same thing.
Were the characters' name the same in the original screenplay? Was it Call and McCrae?
Yeah, I think the names were, or some of the names, not all the names.
Not all
probably.
the names stayed the same.
Yeah.
Yes,
but yeah, and the big ones were, I think.
I once wrote to McMurtry when I was in graduate school. I did my dissertation on Twain, and I wrote a letter to him because I came across a letter that proved that Twain owned property in Archer County. And so I sent him a copy of that to tell him that.
Yeah.
I said maybe, and I said maybe you are unaware that you are one of two famous authors to have owned land in Archer County. He wrote back a kind letter saying no, he didn't know. He was happy to know, and he would check to see if maybe they. Go ahead.
The name of the movie was The Last Picture Show.
Oh yes, I love that. Yes, The Last Picture Show.
Yeah, of course, it was great.
Yeah, it had. Oh my goodness! What now? I'm going blank. I was trying to name the blonde shepherd, Sybil Shepherd.
Sybil Shepherd, Sybil Shepherd.
Yeah, that was another one of those great early novels I read when I was about a senior in high school, and I said, I do like reading. It is when I discovered, that reading could be enjoyable and fun and captivating. So, and I read Lonesome Dove like a lot of people, the novel first, and then when it was made into a miniseries, I was happy they did a miniseries. I didn't see how you could possibly do the novel in a movie, and it was so wonderfully adapted. I've always said ever since it's the most beautifully adapted novel I've ever seen. And,
Thank you.
And it must have been hard for you to choose, what you can do.
Here's what I did. At that time, I was driving a pickup. So Suzanne, my partner, had somebody read it on tape.
Uh-huh.
We have a place on South Padre Island. It's 6 hours to drive down there.
Mm-hmm.
So I would, strike out in my pickup, which is to say you were in a closed-in space.
Right.
And then start playing that tape. And so listening to it, you could see it.
Mm-hmm.
And then in listening to it, you say, oh, I don't need that. Or, oh, that's too close to this. And so you could, because I was driving and doing it like that, I could kind of see a version of the movie unfold as I drove along. In 6 hours, as it turned out, of listening, 6 hours of Larry's novel was just about one episode. So I'd drive to South Padre, and when I got there, then I would start adapting that 6 hours, and to boil down to 2 hours. Anyway, and so that's how I did it. And of course, I'd read the book 2 or 3 times.
Now, you've done a lot of screenplays, of course, Legends of the Fall and A Perfect Storm, for instance. And I'm not sure of A Perfect Storm. Was it a novel before you wrote the screenplay?
Not a novel.
No.
It was it was nonfiction by Sebastian Junger, and boy, just great. It was interesting to adapt that one because nobody really knows what happened on that boat because they had no communication once the storm really came in. And of course everybody was lost. So there was nobody left to tell the tale. And so I just kind of created the end based on, interviews with people who had been on boats or sword boats or shrimp boats or whatever who had gone through storms like that.
Wow.
So
it is an incredible last scene, I must say. Very sad, but
very sad, very sad.
Now, what is the challenge ultimately of the greatest challenge of being a screenwriter when you're adapting material like a novel or a nonfiction work? What's the struggle?
Well, for me, it's being true to the original author's work.
Yeah.
Like, I was not trying to do my version of Lonesome Dove. I was trying to do Larry's version as close as I possibly could. And my own feeling is I wouldn't want to adapt a book that I didn't like. If I found a lot of trouble with the book, then I probably wouldn't want to adapt it at all because I wouldn't. I can write my own stuff, but if I'm adapting, then try to be true to that guy's work.
Sure.
And I think I was with Lonesome Dove.
Oh, I think you were, absolutely. What is it? I heard once that Larry said that he would have preferred that Duvall play Call, Is that true?
I don't know.
You never heard that?
You never said that to me.
No.
But a lot of people thought that.
Uh-huh.
That Duval was more Karl.
Uh-huh.
But but Duval felt like, well, I've played Karl before.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never played a character like Gus. And he wanted very much to play Gus.
Mm-hmm.
And I very much wanted him to.
Oh, I think it was perfect. I mean, women just love Gus.
Yeah. No, they did. And he was just terrific. I mean, my God.
Oh, he was. He's just absolutely perfect, it seems to me. And but I had someone ask me recently, they said, if you were being tracked by somebody, would you rather be tracked by Karl or by Gus? In an Old West sense.
Actually, would you rather get caught by Karl or Gus? I'd rather get caught by Gus.
Yeah, I think so too. He might talk you to death before he kills you, but
that's right.
At least you'd have a little bit of entertainment. So now you have written your own novel. Is this your first novel?
Yeah, it's my first novel. Though, to some degree, writing original screenplays, it's in the same waters.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
It's certainly not the same boat, but but yeah, this is the first one, and this is the first of a trilogy. So there'll be three of these, three of the.
That's why you left us hanging.
The Papa stories.
You left us hanging at the end.
I'm trying to get you back.
I'll be back. Before we get to discussing the Devil's Backbone, I want to look at your, personal history. You started out in journalism, right?
Yeah, I started out in architecture, which I did. But the truth is, I had no idea. What I wanted. I was just bumping around everywhere, and then I wound up in journalism. Not because I wanted to be a journalist,
right?
But just because most of my stuff transferred there, and I never in this world would have disappointed my mother by not going to college and getting a degree. So, but no, in Dallas, my first job was with the SMU Press.
Okay,
and then while I was doing the SMU Press, then Sally and I started the Encino Press, a little regional publishing house that we created. We did that in the evenings and on weekends. So, and then I left. I'm getting ahead of you, but I'll zoom on by this. But then after a while, we moved back to Austin, and I went with the University of Texas Press.
Okay.
And I was there for, I guess, a couple of years, maybe not quite a couple of years. And then, and just simply wanted to take a chance on, our little press. And I did. And Sally kept teaching school so we could eat. And then,
yes.
And then she tutored so we could eat while we were doing the Encino Press. It was great fun. I mean, it was a little mom and pop operation.
And then, so when did you get into the screenplay business?
That was in the 70s, the mid 70s, and I was working on a book, A Visual History of Dallas, and I was driving back and forth to Dallas trying to collect old pictures. And I started thinking about a story my grandfather told me. And because I was driving and not writing, it came to me in images. And so every time I'd get in the car to go to Dallas, I would, pick up seeing this story. And then, then when I got in the car to come back to Austin, I'd pick it up again. And when just about exactly the moment I finished gathering pictures, I also finished seeing that story. So I sat down and wrote it as a screenplay because I saw it, as in images, though I had never seen a screenplay. Anyway, I wrote it. It was Barbarossa, which I later made with Willie. but I had just finished it, and I had it on the corner of my desk, and Bud Strait came in, who was my friend, and Bud had written a movie, Kid Blue, which had gotten made with Dennis Hopper. Anyway, Bud saw it on my desk. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm fiddling around." So he said, "Let me read it." So he took it and read it, and the next morning he called and said, "This damn thing will sell."
Uh-huh.
And I said, "How?" And he said, "Well, let me send it to my agent." His agent was Cindy Degner, who was a New York agent, and she was the wife of Sterling Lord, who at that time was a very prominent literary agent.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, she absolutely hated it. And there was not one thing about it that she liked.
I didn't expect
and
that.
to show me that she was right about what she was saying, she sent it to the two producers who were going around promoting the 7-Ups, which was the sequel to The French Connection.
Okay.
Barry Weiss and Phil D'Antoni. Well, they loved it, much to her surprise. and then they started calling, and they said, they could make a television series if I would only move to L.A. And I said, no, I won't move to L.A. But I thought, well, I can write these things. And then I really got lucky, get a chance to do the Black Stallion.
Mm-hmm.
And or the first Black Stallion, or one or two more later, I think.
Yeah.
But that was a real break because, that was Coppola. And at that moment, Coppola was the most
huge,
prominent director in the world, really. And so after that, I never had trouble getting read and all that stuff. So it's J. Frank Dobie told me one time, luck is being ready for the chance. And that's kind of what it was for me. I was so lucky.
Well, let's talk. We only have like 3 minutes, and I didn't mean to get cut down this short before we talked about your novel, but let's do what we can.
Sure.
Because I picked it up the other day, and I found it very Twainian, except that it's a bit darker.
It's a bit dark. So Twain could be a little dark, too.
Yeah, he could. Yes. But why, how did this story come to you?
Years and years and years ago, I asked my grandfather to write his memoirs.
Uh-huh.
My grandfather didn't even have high school education, but he bought an old typewriter, and with one finger, one hand, he typed out 40-some-odd pages of his memoirs.
Wow.
Then I asked my mom to do that, and Mother didn't have a high school education, but she spent 2 years and she wrote her memoirs. And I was going to blend the two of them together and make one narrative. But I got to a place where I realized my mom had not told the whole story. And I didn't know what the whole story was. So it just froze me. And then I thought, I can reinvent. I know what could have happened, And I started thinking about their stories that way. And very soon after that, everything was a departure. They were just inspirations for ways I wanted to go. So I just started writing as if none of it was from them, though there were inspirations from them. And I made a deal with myself that I wasn't going to try to think it, that I would just, try to let it come out of the pencil however it wanted to come out. And if a character knocked on the door and wanted to jump in the story, the deal I made with the character was, you can stay as long as you're not boring. But if you get boring, the next guy through the door is going to shoot you, hang you, or kill you, and you're out. And I kind of tried to do that. I mean, just absolutely let it flow. Let it go. Yeah. And
well, that's very Twainian too, because he talked about.
I guess so. I don't. I certainly don't even put myself on the same planet with Mark Twain. But
well, you have dialects here that you're writing in, and you're doing it from the point of view of a boy, and that helps us get at truths that you can't get at otherwise. So I like it.
That is true. If you have a kid to talk through, then you can be innocent.
Yes.
And I love that.
Well, when I was saying Twainian, what I meant was that he talked about, he said, I just let the characters tell their story and I get out of the way.
Yeah.
And that was, he talked about writing, Pudd'nhead Wilson, I think it was, that he wrote where he said at the end of the novel, he had started out with some character and that character was gone. He said, I couldn't find her. So I lost her somewhere along the way. And so he talked about it in the way you talk.
Yeah, and that does happen. I mean, it's so wonderful when you think, you're writing the character, and all of a sudden they reach up through the paper and grab your hand and your pencil, and they say, "Well, I don't want to go there. I want to go over here," and then you just follow them along, and you know when they've run away from you, or when they're sitting in the chair next to you. It's just great. It's magic and a great adventure when it's going well. It is a horror beyond description, when it's not going well. Yeah.
Well, listen, we're out of time. I thank you really so much for spending some time with us and giving us the background on Lonesome Dove and your other writing and your new novel, The Devil's Backbone, which is the first one of a trilogy, right?
Yeah, and all published through the University of Texas Press.
Okay. Well, you have a great day. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Again, we've been talking to Mr. Bill Wittliff, the screenwriter for Lonesome Dove, and just enjoyed very much talking to him. He's a great man, one of my idols. Wrote the greatest miniseries of all time, Lonesome Dove. Thank you for joining us today. I've been your host, Dr. W.F. Strong. Here's hoping that all your books are good reads.